This guest speaker is going to talk about the importance of Juneteenth and also, just give us a little history lesson. For those of y'all who's watching at home, please pay attention. This is some great information. All right, everybody, here's Dr. Elvin Thompson.
All righty then. Well, good morning. How's everyone doing today? Well, this is kind of exciting. I'm here and I'm walking through your office just a moment ago, and I thought I had a pretty nice view in my office in Augusta, and I'm going to stop telling people that. Listen, I want to say thank you, first of all, to everyone who made this possible and for the leadership of your company who even takes the time to allow for such things as today, because it speaks very well of leadership, to understand the importance of being able to look at the diversity of our world, the diversity of our country, and the diversity within your company, and be able to understand that it's very important to recognize that when we celebrate one, we celebrate all. When we celebrate one person and we talk about the accomplishments of one person, we talk about ourselves, because we're all interconnected with one another. So I'm so very grateful. Thank Daryl for even thinking about lifting up my name. And Alyssa, thank you. It's a pleasure to talk with you and to meet you finally in person. What a pleasant person. You're such a pleasant person to talk with, But Juneteenth is such an important holiday. It's just now starting to take off. It's starting to get traction now. But Juneteenth really is not a new holiday as many people think it is. Juneteenth has been around for a long time, but it was not celebrated as widely as it is right now. So I'm going to talk to you just a little bit, about how we got to where we're at with Juneteenth and why it's important that we celebrate Juneteenth. What does that mean? What does it mean to us in the greater scheme of things as America and as people? What does that mean, and why do we need to celebrate Juneteenth? Don't we have enough holidays? Don't we have enough things to celebrate? Well, we can always make room for one more. We want to make sure that everyone knows they have a seat at the table, and that everyone knows that their voice is important and their accomplishments are important. But Juneteenth did not just start right now. Juneteenth goes way back. If you really want to talk about it, you have to talk about way back in 1852. In 1852, July the 5th, to be exact, 1852, one of the greatest speakers there has ever been, Frederick Douglass. I'm sure many of you all have heard of Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist himself. But Frederick Douglass was invited way back in 1852 on July the 5th to Rochester, New York. And he was brought there because they were commemorating the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And so they brought him there to be a guest speaker. His most famous speech was given that day. It is the most widely known speech of all the speeches that Frederick Douglass ever gave. And to me, it's probably the most important of all of the speeches that he has ever given. And that speech was entitled, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. And what he was talking about was that while we were celebrating the 4th of July and commemorating the Declaration of Independence, hundreds of America's children were still in chattel slavery. And so Frederick Douglass was saying, what does the 4th of July mean to those who are not a part of those freedoms? What does that mean to those who don't have an opportunity to take part in this celebration because they're not included in that celebration at that time? And so he gave that speech, and what he was trying to impress upon them was the importance of understanding that until all of us are free, none of us are free. And he tried to make that as plain as he possibly could, urging for the for doing away with slavery as quickly as possible. Of course, we know that was in 1852, but slavery did not end there. Although he gave a great speech, it was just that. It fell on deaf ears in many cases. And slavery continued in America for many, many more years until we get up to January the 1st, 1863. So from 1852 to 1863, we finally get to 1863, and Abraham Lincoln signs the Emancipation Proclamation on January the 1st, 1863. And most people celebrate that, and it's a great thing. It really is. We are so grateful for the Emancipation Proclamation and the signing of it. But the reality of it is that the Emancipation Proclamation only freed those slaves who were in Confederate states. It did not free all the slaves. Most people hear about it and say that with the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, slavery was done away with in America, but it was not. It only applied to those slaves who are in Confederate states. Did not apply to the border states at all. And so, although in 1863 he signed the Emancipation Proclamation and those slaves who were in those Confederate states were freed, there was still countless numbers of people who were still enslaved in America. And I think that's very important that you recognize that, because it did not end with the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. It was a step. That's what Juneteenth really is about, you all. It's about steps that we take toward this idea of freedom. Because freedom is this idea. Freedom is not this thing that you can actually hold on to, is it? It's not this thing that you can grasp in your hands. Freedom is this ideal state of mind. It's this ideal state for us as a people that I would submit to you that we are still striving to get to in many cases. So 1863, Abraham Lincoln does sign the Emancipation Proclamation, and it does free a great number of people, but it doesn't free everyone. We fast forward now 2 more years, up until 1865. Of course, we know what happens on April the 9th, 1865. April the 9th, 1865 is when the Confederate War comes to an end. So the Confederate War ends on April the 9th, 1865. And therefore, on April 9th, 1865, April, May, June, 2 months later, we get to Juneteenth. And it was on June the 19th, 1865, that General Gordon Granger arrived in this place called Galveston, Texas. He and his troops came into Galveston, Texas. Why? Because Texas was one of those states that still had slaves. Although those in the Confederate states had been free, the slaves in Texas and many other states had still been working as slaves on those plantations. General Gordon Granger comes into town. He comes in to establish martial law inside of there, and he now tells the slaves there, "You're free." And he tells them, "You should have been free for the last 2 years." Well, that probably didn't go over well, because if I found out that everybody else been free for the last 2 years and I'm just getting it, I probably would have been feeling some kind of way, And so on June the 19th, 1865, General Granger comes into town with the troops, and he tells them, the slaves there, that you are now free. That's where you get June 19th in the celebration. That's why we call it Juneteenth, because it occurred on June the 19th, 1865. Again, it was just a step, though, because even then, all the slaves were still not free. The slaves in some of the border states, including Texas, were free as of June the 19th, 1865, when they got the word. And that was a good thing. A year later, they had the very first Juneteenth celebration in Galveston, Texas. So the first time that Juneteenth was ever really celebrated, it was celebrated in Galveston, Texas, on the anniversary of the date that General Gordon Granger came into town to tell those slaves and that they were free. But we had been having other ideas of celebrations about freedom, things called Jubilee celebrations. So they had Jubilee celebration, they had Freedom Day celebrations, they had Emancipation Day celebration. So if you go back and you start looking in history, you try to find, okay, let me see Juneteenth. Well, it wasn't always named Juneteenth. It was called other things, but it meant the same thing. It's the day that we were free. It's the day that we became emancipated. And it was a day of jubilation. It was a day to celebrate. It was a day for them to recognize that this idea of freedom had finally come in some small way. I sure wish I could tell you that was the end of the story and we were good to go and America was great then and we had finally realized that idea called freedom and everybody was singing Kumbaya around the campfire while we ate some marshmallows. It just didn't happen like that. Because although on June 19th, 1865, those slaves in Galveston, Texas was finally free, it took all the way up until December the 6th of 1865 for all the rest of the slaves to get free in America. Because it was on December the 6th, 1865, that the 13th Amendment was finally ratified. So it was with the 13th Amendment that it freed all slaves across the board in America. And so freedom did not come with the sign of emancipation as a blanket slate in America. It came 2 years later on December the 6th, 1865, with the signing and the ratification of the 13th Amendment. And although everyone was free then, you have to remember this, is that what is freedom if you have no income? What is freedom if you can't feed your family? What is freedom if you don't have a home? I mean, freedom is a good idea, but just the idea of freedom alone won't pay bills. It won't clothe the children. It won't put food on the table, really. There's got to be more that goes along with it. And so while the idea of freedom came, and we went then into Reconstruction, right? And Reconstruction for the first 2 years was a great thing in America. I mean, it really was a great thing, but it was just another step. We were just taking steps. All the way, America has just been taking steps. And so that's why I tell people today, you have to be patient with America. You really do. America's a baby country. It is one of the youngest countries that there is. And what other countries went through many years ago, America is just now starting to go through some of those things right now. We're starting to face things that other countries faced years ago that we read about in history books, you know, when I was little, but don't talk about that. That was a long time ago. We read about those other countries and things like that, but America is just now starting to go through that. And we've been taking baby steps to get there. And so we took another step, Reconstruction. We had more diversity in political office during Reconstruction than we've had ever since then. For the first 2 years during Reconstruction, we had more people, more diversity in the House of Representatives and in our Senate than we've had since then. Because within 3 years of Reconstruction, they put laws back on the book that took away the power. When we talk about the right to vote, slaves had the right to vote once they were immediately free. They had it. That vote was taken away from them. When they were free, they had it. And then we had to fight then all the way up now for almost another 100 years for them to go back and get what we had when we first came out of slavery. Isn't that amazing? All these things took place, and now we're fighting to try to get back to where we were when we first came up out of slavery. And so with December the 6th, 1865, with the ratification of the 13th Amendment, ended slavery across the board, and they were celebrating Jubilee celebration, Emancipation celebration, Freedom Day celebrations. But they were done with a purpose. It's not just a party. Juneteenth is not just about having a good old party. That would be wonderful. A good party is always in order. You know, I'm sure, you know, up there with those Celtics, they probably having a pretty good party right about now, you know, and I'm sure it started last night and it's going to last for a little while, you know. I almost want to be there with them because I know that's going to be pretty fun up there. And so a good party is always in order. But Juneteenth is more than just a party. It can't just be a party, you all. It's got to be about more than that. So what was it about then? What is it supposed to be about now? Why is it that it's important? Why is it important for all of us, not just a particular sector of us, but everybody in America? Because there were three things. There was three things that got accomplished by having this Juneteenth celebration. It started then, and it's what we're supposed to be doing now. The first purpose of Juneteenth was to honor those who didn't make it out of slavery. It was a way for us to honor their memory, to honor those who had went through the trauma and the tragedy of chattel slavery and didn't make it out, who only had a dream about freedom but never got a chance to taste the freedom. So we do these Juneteenth celebrations in a way of honoring our ancestors and remember that not all of them were able to see what we see today. It's a way for us to make sure that they are not forgotten. It's a way for us to make sure that the struggle is not forgotten. And ladies and gentlemen, if we don't remember it, if we don't talk about it, it will be forgotten. Because freedom is an idea. It's an idea, ladies and gentlemen, and it is a step, it is a process. And we are always just one generation away from going back from the progress that we've made. We've made a lot of progress, but each generation's job is not only to be able to sit back and be grateful for the progress that has been made, but each generation then has a responsibility that they now go further and they make more progress and that they take the next step. The steps back there is why we honor. So we honor our ancestors. We remember those like my great-great-grandmother, my great-great-grandfather, all of them from my great-great-grandparents on back in my family were all slaves in Alabama, every single one of them. And so when we celebrate Juneteenth, we celebrate and say to them that we're here. They try to destroy us, but we're still here. We're stronger than what came against us, and we're still here. So the first reason why we celebrate Juneteenth is because it honors the ancestors. Those ancestors were Americans. They were slaves brought from Africa, but once they came over here and started having babies over here in America, I don't know who could be more American. They worked the ground, they tilled the soil, they sweated, they took all the beatings, they took all that. I think they were Americans. And so when we talk about them, we can't just talk about them as being those people. We have to talk about them as being we the people, because that's what it's about, right? We the people. So we honor them. The second thing that we do with Juneteenth, and the reason why it is so important, and I'm so glad that you all are doing this today, is because Juneteenth allows us for a brief moment to be able to celebrate. It allows us to be able to, take a moment and look at where we came from and to be able to say, you know what? We're not where we want to be, but we're not where we used to be, right? We come a long way, baby. We got a lot of progress we got to still make, but we have made some strides. We're doing better. I was telling some people on Sunday, we're doing a lot better than my family ever thought we would be doing. We've accomplished. We make more money now. We live in better houses. We drive better cars. Our kids go to better schools. We've made a lot of progress here in America, and we must celebrate that. We can sit back and talk about how far we have to go, but that takes every time we do so, we need to take a moment and celebrate how far we've come. Look at us. Look in this room. Look at the diversity that is in this room. Man, our forefathers could not have imagined being able to sit here like this. It's the idea that Dr. Martin Luther King talked about, right? That idea that one day our children will be able to sit together at the table of brotherhood. That idea thing. And then you're sitting in this room and you are living out that idea. Every day that you come to work, you get to sit next to people who don't look like you, who have different ideals and different backgrounds than you. And you get to live out the idea and that dream every single day. And I think that's a reason to celebrate, right? I think that's a cause for celebration. I think that's a cause for us to take a moment out of our day, out of our schedule. And yes, we could be doing a whole lot of other things, because the business never stops. There's always more to be done as you continue to try to grow your company, But at the end of the day, you have to take a moment, take a deep breath, take it in, and look at how far we come and be grateful for that. And I hope that that's what you all doing. You know, I saw some nice cupcakes out there, and cupcakes always help you celebrate a little better, don't they? I mean, they kind of always, you know what I'm saying, give you an opportunity to pause for a moment, even if it's just to put a cupcake in your mouth. You got to pause to do you kind of got to pause to do that now, don't you? And so the second thing that we do is we celebrate. And so take a moment to celebrate. Take a moment to look around and really take a look at how far we come. Take a look around and kind of look and see that America's not as bad as, you know, some would have you to believe. We got work to do. But if you take a look around, we're doing pretty good. We've come a long way. So the second thing is that we celebrate. And finally, the third thing we do with Juneteenth is Juneteenth has always been about advocating. It's always been about how do we take what we've accomplished and advocate for greater. It's about the advocation. It's about advocation of dignity, respect, and worth of all people. It's making sure that everyone in America understands they all have dignity. They all have worth. And that everyone in America has a right to be respected and treated like they're somebody. And that we all work together advocating for those shortcomings that we have in America to improve. It's how do we look back after we have celebrated our accomplishment. And then we take a look forward and we say, okay, where can we go though? If we've accomplished all of this, man, just imagine what we can accomplish. I mean, if we did all this, and for the most part, we did it fighting against each other, imagine what's ahead of us if we just fight together with each other. So it looks ahead and it tells us now, advocate. Advocate for someone who doesn't look like you. Advocate for the rights of people who don't think like you. Advocate for the rights of people who may not believe like you. But advocate, because when you fight for their rights, you fight for yours. When you fight for others' rights, you fight for your rights. If you don't fight for other people's rights, then you'll soon find yourself at risk of losing your own rights. And so we all have to fight for the rights of the person to our left and to our right. And we have to advocate for that. If we have to advocate for that, rather it's through political means, rather it's through peaceful protest, or however we must do, is by using our voices and using our platforms. Using the platforms that we're given at whatever level of that platform is for you, that you use that platform that you're on, because that platform costs. It costs blood and it costs sweat of those who came before you to give you the ability to stand on that platform at whatever level your platform happens to be. And so now we have this obligation, don't we? We have this responsibility that now the platforms that we have, that we use that platform to advocate. That we advocate for the rights to make America what it said it was going to be, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union. You know, that union thing, united thing, that together thing, you know what I'm saying? That's what we're supposed to be doing, working together to unite. And that we stand against those who would divide us. That we do not allow others to come back and divide us, separate us, and push us out. You know, when they finally did, in 1865, December 6, 1865, and 13th Amendment was ratified, you know, there was this great idea that was floating around that they had these meetings up in Washington, D.C., and New York, and a couple of other places like Boston. They had these meetings, and those meetings were held, and they were held with the idea of, okay, now that these slaves, these once upon a time slaves are free, what we're going to do with them now? Where are they going to go? I mean, because even some abolitionists, although they wanted, you know, us free, they didn't all want you to live next door to them, though. You can be free, but don't live next door. So we're working on that right now, you know what I'm saying? So we're working towards it. So they had this idea, you know, of starting these colonies. Let's colonize them. And so the colonization effort took off. That's how you got Liberia. Liberia is one of those colonies. It is a colony of freed slaves. Those slaves, when they once freed, were sent to Liberia. They formed their own religion. They formed their own government. They formed everything there. And now you see Liberia as a nation, but what Liberia is this idea that we need to put them somewhere. Well, can I tell you something? I'm not going anywhere. And I hope you don't go anywhere, because we are here and we're here to stay. All of us. And we are better if we all stand here and we stand here together. That's what Juneteenth is about. It's about honoring the past, celebrating where we've been and what we've accomplished, and advocating for those things that we still have not yet realized. So I'm grateful to you for celebrating Juneteenth. I'm glad that you paused for a moment out of your day to take the time to remember just how far we've come. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, everybody, for paying attention to him. Was a great lesson. Also, a little known fact about him, he's a big Alabama fan. So if y'all want to get on to him about that, y'all can. Also, we got cupcakes out here. He's going to be around for a little bit. If y'all want to ask any questions, feel free. He'll be around to answer any questions y'all may have. We also have lunch coming soon. What is Mary Max? That's what we got today for lunch. So again, thank everybody for attending this. Y'all have a great day.